Welcome to Data and AI Mastery, the podcast where we bring you cutting-edge insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories from the leaders shaping the future of data and AI across the globe. I'm your host, Raoul-Gabriel Urma, founder of Cambridge Spark, the leader in transformational data and AI upskilling, career development, and progression. In each episode, I will be diving into real-world case studies of companies harnessing the power of AI to drive innovation, reduce costs, and create new business opportunities. So whether you are an aspiring data scientist, AI engineer, or seasoned executive, this show is designed to give you the tools and knowledge to stay ahead in a world where data is transforming every aspect of business. Stay ahead, stay inspired, stay masterful. Welcome to Data and AI Mastery. Hi Richard, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Doing great. I'm really excited for our conversation today, Richard, for several reasons. One, you're the Chief Data and AI Officer at Haleon, a really exciting role, really exciting company, especially because I've been using the Centrum vitamins and the toothpaste Sensodyne as well, and Voltaren. So, on a personal basis, very exciting. Haleon is one of the largest, global healthcare consumer company. And second reason is you have such an interesting career. You've worked at EY, at Reckitt, and it's really senior leadership role. So, Richard, I can't wait to deep dive in your background and how you think about AI today.
Looking forward to it.
So let's get to it. So maybe before we go into the AI space, you've had such a cool career. I'd love to get a bit of an insight from your perspective. You've worked in finance, in retail, in sports, now consumer healthcare. What's the thread throughout your journey?
I suppose the thread is, look, there's always new buzzwords in this space, right? Going all the way back, there was advanced analytics, there was big data, there was machine learning, there's generative AI. There's always something new coming down the track. But actually, at their very core, they are all the same thing. Fundamentally, it's about how do you take large data sets that are very difficult for humans to personally process, and how do you make better decisions, right? So how do I synthesize large amounts of information, get to the point where I'm making a business decision which is better than the one I would have made otherwise? And I think going back even before I got into analytics, when I worked in things like market research out of university and academia, it was the same thing. I was looking at large, panel data sets, and then I was looking at large retail data sets, and it's always been the same thing. And I think at the very core of it all, there's no difference between a really advanced model and a Power BI dashboard if you can make a better decision off the back of it. It's just a tool that allows you to harness it, and I've always found that intriguing.
My next question is what do you find exciting about the data and AI space for your career, and especially today?
It's just how fast moving it is. I mean, it's, for me, I've always been a very intellectually curious individual. The idea of sort of being in a job or a function that was in stasis and that was it, that may appeal to some people. It just doesn't appeal to me. I like the idea that it's constantly breaking barriers, that there's new frontiers that we can look at. I love the challenge of the fact that actually it's an area that's often poorly understood by people outside. And if you can play that role of translator, it's almost like a modern priesthood in a way, in terms of trying to explain things to people and bring them on the journey. So it's the curiosity and the fact that the translation job that you can play in the business has always appealed to me.
Amazing. And that really resonates, the fast pace. Definitely, if you're intellectually curious, what cool times to be living right now. So I guess that leads me to the next question around, in the world of AI, we went through AI, generative AI, agentic AI now. I'd love for you to describe a little bit how do you think about it, and as part of your role, right, as a chief data and AI officer, how do you think about it, and how would you think about the differences?
This is a conversation that's been live for me over the last 18 months or so that I've been at Haleon, which is, again, going back to my first point. There is a common theme through all these things. They're not distinct things. They are evolutions, developments, slightly different ways of doing similar tasks. And what I've tried to explain to senior leadership and people within the business is that what you're seeing are parts of a whole. It's a progression of technology. They're not separate things. Going back to the buzzword comment, as we move through those buzzwords, it's not fundamental. It's just a development of what has gone before. And I think if people can understand that machine learning and generative AI and LLMs and agentic are all the same thing. They're all components of the same things, and that kind of, it's bringing people on that educational journey that really helps me in my role if they can understand and get their head around these concepts. So I've been spent a lot of time trying to make sure that people do understand these concepts, spending time on the education, spending time explaining things to people that they may not initially understand how it relates to their role, but hopefully they go away afterwards thinking, actually, I do better understand this space. I can speak to people in technology, vendors, etc., in a more informed way.
That's really interesting. So, as part of your conversation, is there any misconception you had to debunk as part of that sort of educational journey?
Yes, I mean, the key thing that I had to debunk was that these are absolutely separate things, right? So and I think the key one, the one that's topical now is really not very long ago, generative AI was everything. Everybody was running around trying to do generative AI, and now everybody wants to do agentic. And I think, explaining to people that actually these things are linked, that they could be part of systems and all those kind of concepts is important, because I think if people in their minds segment them, and the most common question we get is, why aren't we doing agentic, or are we doing agentic? And then when you scratch under the surface, that's not really what people mean. They're using that because that's the latest iteration of the language, not because they understand the difference between generative AI and agentic. So it's a kind of almost a buzzword bingo where they're pulling out the latest term without understanding how they necessarily relate to each other.
That's super interesting. And when you hear that question, is there any expectations that people have around what's the opportunity available, or is there some FOMOs that is driving? Are we doing agentic AI, or what do people expect to get from it?
There's definitely a FOMO, right? I mean, there's clearly an element where there's pressure internally and very much externally, whether it be from board investors, from general expectations of a company of our size that we should be doing it. I always have a more structured, strategic approach to how you approach these types of things. So I think it's really more about again, taking people through it and explaining actually what is the role that something like agentic can play, what is it not relevant to, because it's not the answer to everything. It's, there are much more basic capabilities in many circumstances that meet your need. So people come to me and they say, I want this, and I say, that's okay, that's a bit of machine learning, we already have that capability, we can deploy that. Yeah, but I want agentic. Yeah, but you don't need agentic to do that, right? So we're trying to work out what's the right tool for the right job. And this goes back around to the kind of educational discussion, which is, I need people with some knowledge. I need people with a reasonable level of knowledge where they know not to ask me for a specific technology. They understand technologies and how they are slightly different to each other, but they're asking me for solutions. And they understand that then we will look at the technology solutions in the background and come back with the best fit. That's the way that we want to operate, not people saying, I want agentic, when it's not the answer to their requirement.
That's great. And I guess when it comes to education, what are some of the initiatives that you would recommend or you have put in place to, I guess, address that gap and ensure that everyone can really work together with the same sort of fundamental base?
So we started at the top of the organization, right? So we started with Cambridge Spark, and we decided to go executive team and executive team -1 and go for really in-depth educational program, where they're dedicating significant amounts of time to understanding this topic. Brian, our CEO, was very clear that he wanted us to be the best educated leadership team in the FTSE 100 when it came to AI. And we made sure that the leadership team goes first, that we're led by people with a very good understanding in this space, but we're also deploying best in class platforms across the organization where people can go on learning journeys to whatever extent they want to. So if they want a basic understanding of terminology, etc., the foundational things that they need to understand, they can do that. If they want to go all the way through into how do I operate in low code environments, vibe coding, all the way through to actual coding, they can do that as well. And we're now developing it to the extent where we're looking at roles and job families and saying, for you, in your role as an analyst in finance, you should probably do these 10 modules. If you're somebody working in technology and data science, and at an early part of your career, you should go all the way through this journey and do all 20 modules and get to a very high level of upskill. So we've gone from a very low knowledge environment when I joined 18 months ago. And I think actually we're now probably par for the course. We're probably average for the industry. By the time we've fully implemented this, I want us to be very much industry leading in terms of our knowledge.
Wow, that's super cool to see the commitment to investing into your people, bringing them on the journey, and ensure everybody has the knowledge and skills needed to succeed. So that's really cool to see. I hope you're enjoying today's conversation. If you're finding the insights useful, please do take a moment to subscribe to the Data and AI Mastery podcast and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Every new follow helps us reach more people and share the incredible work being done by today's data and AI leader. All right, let's go back to the episode. I was thinking, now that you've invested so much in getting people on the journey and have the knowledge in AI, you must get a lot of demand and interest for, hey, we can use AI in my business function, agentic AI. Can you help me with, certain projects? So how do you think about ownership in this environment where everybody wants to get on the journey?
So I think this is where you start to get to a strategy discussion. People throw around strategy a lot. Very often it's not quite what they mean. In this circumstance, when there are very significant pieces of work that need to be done to enable what people want in terms of everything from the basics of master data. When I say basics, it's very complicated, but master data management or all of those kind of elements, engineering, you can't just turn it on. There isn't, I know a lot of people want there to be, that there isn't a magic AI tap that we can turn on. You have to do all the foundational work. And so we are working on that. We're working on what is the tech strategy to make this possible. And that's a roadmap over, X number of years where we start with certain areas of the business and we'll work our way through the organization. I don't want the rest of the company, the business, to worry about that. What I want them to worry about is what is their business strategy, and where, given the knowledge that they now have in that senior leadership cohort, where do they now believe that AI could play a role in that journey, right? So that they're better informed, much better informed than they were 12 months ago. We've had some really enriched conversations now where they're coming to me sort of saying, I think there's an opportunity here. Whereas before it was, as I said, it was just, I want to do agentic, right? That's not the conversation we want to have. We want to have conversations saying, I'm trying to achieve this outcome. To do that, I need best-in-class forecasting that works at every level of the organization. That's okay. We can do that. We have solutions that deliver your business requirement, but they now have the knowledge to know that there isn't, that AI can play a role in that and that it can deliver value for them. So much better conversations, business strategy, tech strategy, marrying up.
Wow, I love it. That's a fantastic evolution, right? So if I play this back, there's some foundational sort of infrastructure, data, and so on that is required, and you don't want people to worry about this, and like it's available. But now it sounds like the conversation's shifted very much to like business outcomes, problem solving, but using common language that we now have in the AI world and understanding of the art of the possible. So if we take that, I guess, to the next step, Richard, is say now we want to implement and deliver on those business outcomes and actually make the work happen. How do you think about ownership of AI spend and AI tools? Do you see this as centralized, or different business function would have ownership around their own sort of a AI implementation? How do you think about it?
So there's two big elements to this, I think. One is oversight and governance, and one is, this isn't free. It costs money. And I think there is a little bit of a conception that the build costs money, but once you got it running, it's a free resource. It's not, right? And we need to start having conversations about the fact that how does this process work today? What does this process cost to run? It could be external vendors, it could be contractors, it could be lots of technology that we use. There's lots of different things that we do. If we replace this with an AI system, particularly anything in the sort of agentic realm, well, what does that cost to run? We need to start comparing those things. The cost longer term will evolve. I'll come to that in a second. The key thing we're looking at the moment as we move into an agentic world is governance, though. We've always had strong governance at Haleon. I was very impressed when I joined how advanced it already was in terms of our responsible AI programs, and how we made sure that people weren't taking risks with the company's reputation and so on and so forth. So that's very strong. But that's in a world where we were building select standalone use cases, right? So we're deploying a generative AI capability, that kind of thing. Agentic is materially different. It fundamentally runs processes in the business end to end. And I think once, when we're building those things, it needs to remain centralized. You need people who understand what they're doing. You need to understand people who understand how to build efficiency, how to build cost models. But once it's built and it moves to BAU, that should naturally migrate to owners within the business. Tech will stay involved from an oversight and governance perspective, those kind of things, but it should be owned by a business function. We need them to own their usage, own their budgets, be responsible for how they use this technology. And then I think they'll be more disciplined in terms of how they use it. We shall see. We'll see.
I mean, it's really amazing to hear your perspective and really refreshing. I like what you said around clearly agentic AI. I guess the complexity and the risk has grown big time with all those agents owning end-to-end workflows, like you've said, and that requires expertise. At the same time, I imagine from a business function, you want to go as fast as you can and start to show results. So, how do you find the right balance between governance, innovation, and speed, and keeping everyone happy, or all the stakeholders involved?
So the most common phrase that I use with my team is we've got to raise the floor and raise the ceiling, right? And what I mean by that is going back to the stuff I was just talking about the foundational work that needs to be done. I'm super lucky in an executive team who I've explained this to. They give me the time to walk them through a topic that probably isn't top of their agenda, but to explain why it matters and actually how, if we do the foundational work I'm asking them to let me do, we will leap ahead when it's done. We will accelerate away from our competition. So I think that's important. But people still want shiny new things. And I think a strategy that says, could you just wait 5 years while we fix everything over here? It's just not going to fly, right? So what we're looking at is, where is the low hanging fruit? Where can we build capabilities rapidly? Now, the answer to that question is typically in unstructured data, right? So where do we have unstructured data today? Documentation, that kind of thing, where we can start to harness this technology to accelerate things so people feel that they're deriving value, that we're moving forward, that we're building the principles and the discipline in teams and functions, so they're starting to build this into their day-to-day lives, while we build some of the stickier, large, big data problems in the background. So as we work our way through those, and we are systematically working our way through them rapidly, we're still giving people capabilities and tools, so the organization feels like it's progressing. So we raise the floor by fixing the foundations. We raise the ceiling by giving people a sense that the technology is coming, they're deriving value from it.
Great. Sounds like you really need a balanced approach, kind of like you say, tackle both ends at the same time to drive the value. And speaking of value, how do you think about measurements of value creation? Because having spoken to many clients and leaders, is definitely a big focus right now on cost savings, automations for obvious reasons. AI can do really well, but there's still some question marks around growth levels when it comes to customer experience, delight, revenue creation, and so on. How do you think about it, and how do you find a balance between those two, or is there any specific focus you think right now in the market?
So I think the stickiest problem in this space today is visible P&L value from these builds. Now, it's not because these builds don't deliver value. It's because people haven't quite got used to the concept. This isn't a Haleon problem. This is an industry-wide problem. But I think it fundamentally comes down to having much stricter business cases in terms of how you deploy these things. I'm going to spend X with an understanding that it will deliver Y, and it will deliver Y from these 10 outcomes. So I think as we start to scale it, we'll have to move into that world. But it's going to be tricky because people aren't used to it.
That's a great wisdom that you're sharing. We're not used to costing a process in its own right and thinking about all the resources involved, labor, contract, and IT spend and all of that. So just starting documenting that before, you can actually improve it, automate it, and so on. But there's probably a big lag from we've automated this process or parts of it and realizing the benefits of automation from a resource point of view. So that takes time also to cascade through. So
It does. It takes a lot of time to cascade through, but again, it's understanding all the dimensions of costs that sit around it, right? And I think going back to some of the work I used to do at EY, that was part of my role, was doing process mapping, understanding what it takes to take out a mortgage. And a lot of people who sit within a bank, they'd see one stage of that process as an example, and they go, well, that's how you take out a mortgage. But it's a process that goes on over 18 months. It's a huge undertaking, and there's multiple touch points. And it's the same within our business. To get things done within our business, you see the 5% of the process you work on, but actually to expand that out into a much broader understanding of how the business works is going to be interesting. And I think some of the transformation programs that we have operating today will very much be looking at that kind of thing. So that maturity and that thinking is absolutely coming out here.
Great. So it sounds like in order to realize, the benefits of agentic AI across the whole organization and in any organization, having people that, have the knowledge and skills to think about process identification, defining it, costing it, mapping it, and then using AI around it, that's going to be extremely beneficial skill set to have around.
No, it will. And look, we've already started doing some of these things. And the things that a lot of AI is good at is back end automation type stuff, right? It's not the cool stuff that people necessarily want to hear about, but it is good at it. And I'm talking about things like invoices and all of those kind of things. And that's where we started. We've started looking at processes that actually, when you look at them in the round, they're hundreds of hours of people's time is being spent on absolutely pointless menial tasks of matching invoices and dates and times and all of those kind of things. That's where the short-term unlock is going to be, because they're identifiable processes. We know the process exists. We know all the people that work on it. We know all the people who work on it don't enjoy it. We know they could be doing something much higher value for the business, like out there doing sales calls, dealing with retailers, that kind of thing. That's perfect. Let's go for that, because it's a limited process that we can observe, and we'll work our way through these processes and start automating them one by one. It's quite exciting stuff.
Yeah, super exciting. And I guess to counter that a little bit, is there any use cases, when it comes to it that you don't think we're ready yet, or, it's not quite working?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier I've noted is in spaces where we have a high degree of human interaction today. So, and what I mean by that is, if we have some processes in the business where the end-to-end process looks long, and it is long. It could be 4 or 5 weeks to get something relatively simple done. But when we've broken those processes down and looked at them, 75% of that is human negotiation and interaction. It's not actually a technical process. It's about people deciding, and is it black, it's white, or is it gray? Let's get to the gray and move forward. I think that's very hard for AI to address, that kind of thing. It can truncate those kind of processes a little bit, but if it is fundamentally at its heart a negotiation, it can't really help with that. It can provide better data for better conversations and all that kind of stuff, but it can't change human nature.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear, and I guess it shows the importance of human in the loop and human judgment, as kind of like fundamentals. What keeps you up at night when it comes to AI transformation and also fellow leaders like yourself in the industry?
It depends on the day, so lots of things, but the main the main thing that keeps me up at night is a lack of discipline, I think. Again, going back to how do we do this over time? We can go for a model where 1,000 flowers bloom and all that kind of stuff, but I suspect 1,000 flowers will wilt, and I suspect that will lead to fatigue, and it will lead to people becoming disillusioned with this space. We have to move through this in a disciplined way if we genuinely want to unlock value. And so, particularly given my role, there's lots of people in my team who are doing things which are much more technical and on the ground. I feel like my role is to be the overall shepherd, to make sure that we stay on track with the direction of travel I want this to move in, which is, yes, we're doing the foundations. Yes, we're doing the hard yards in terms of master data management. Yes, we're reducing the complexity of our estate. Nobody cares about these things, but I know they need to happen for us to win in the future. So I'm trying to make the organization move at a pace and discipline that means that we're moving in an appropriate way and not trying to build things on business functions or data sets or areas that simply aren't ready for it, because it's a waste of our time and effort.
Hey, Richard, I could talk to you for hours. I love the passion and clearly your commitment to the success of this transformation. But I need to take you to a quick fire round of questions. Is that
All
okay?
right, I'm ready.
All right. So, in the age of AI, how do you think about hiring? What do you look for now in people you're hiring? Is there like a difference compared to maybe 5 or 10 years ago?
So there's a couple of things really. I think if I'm looking at, what kind of questions I would ask people now rather than compared to a few years ago, I want to understand how people are harnessing technology. It doesn't have to be AI, just to be clear, but how they understand how they harness technology to improve their own personal productivity, right? So, I'm not one of these people who thinks that AI is going to replace people en masse. I think it will augment people. I think people will become more efficient. They'll become faster at what they do. Roles will change, all of those kind of things. But people will become augmented. Um, and I think the funny thing is that in their private lives, people are AI natives already. They just, in many cases, they don't realize it. Their mobile phone, Netflix, their bank, Amazon, they're using AI every day. Most people are now, the younger people are using ChatGPT all the time. So they're AI natives in the same way that people were digital natives 10, 15 years ago. That needs to come into the workplace, and people need to, be less resistant to it in the workplace and understand that all they're doing is augmenting themselves and making themselves more efficient in terms of how they operate. So do they understand that concept of augmentation? How are they seeing it? How did they done that in their work life is an important thing for me.
Fantastic. Any recommendations on how to stay up to date in this space at the moment? Like, podcast or resources? Like how do you ensure that yourself, you're up to date in this really fast moving environment?
Well, I take the call, so I speak to people who say they've got new ideas. It's there's a certain percentage of my time I can dedicate to that, frankly, but I do dedicate the time to it. If people say they've got something genuinely new they want to show me, I'm prepared to listen. I do make. I'm at London Tech Week next week, so I go along to the conferences, I walk the floors, I meet people, listen to what they've got. And I think it's, you've got to have an outside in perspective in my kind of role. You have to be able to bring that in. I was at SAP Sapphire in Madrid. It was a hardship for me to go to Madrid for the week, as you can imagine. So I was there the whole week, looking at what they got, listening to what people were saying about their capabilities. So it's an important part of what I do.
Amazing. Yeah. So like conferences, um, staying open minded to new ideas and so on. This seems really important. And can I ask you a couple more personal questions?
Sure.
What's the best piece of career advice you've ever received?
I think the best piece of career advice I received was from a partner when I was at EY, and he basically said, "Always look for the overlapping self-interest." And it sounded quite Machiavellian at the time, but his point was that's how you build alliances, right? So effectively, by understanding not what is difference in terms of what you're trying to achieve and what I'm trying to achieve, identifying the overlap of your self-interest is how you build an alliance with somebody and start to work together, and that can then develop into better and better relationships. If you map everybody in your environment around what your overlapping self-interests are, you start to create networks of people who have the same interest in achieving things. And I've always applied that in my career since.
Oh, that's really, really insightful advice, actually. My next two questions are a bit more on the fun side. So, what was your favorite subject back at school?
I would say history, but I took politics and onto university. But I think probably you can see behind me, it's either AI books or history one way or another. So probably history. I should have done a history degree. My life would have gone a different way.
Amazing. So, I guess the history of AI must be, or intelligence, could be a really interesting
Yes, there's
topic.
books over there about that, exactly that.
Beautiful. And final question: what's your favorite music genre?
Music genre, I'm a kid of the 80s, 90s, I'm afraid. So much to my children's disappointment, I listen to a lot of grunge and that kind of thing. So it's,
Excellent.
but, to be fair, my son's kind of into it. My son walks around the house in a Red Hot Chili Peppers t-shirt, so he's on board with my music taste, which is all good.
Playing Californication.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Beautiful. Well, Richard, it's been an absolute delight to have you on the show today. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Such a fantastic conversation with Richard. I could speak with him for hours, and there's so many really interesting nuggets to recap. So the first one was, in a world that is moving so fast, we've got AI, Gen AI, LLMs, Agentic AI. It's really easy to get excited on technology, but at the end of the day, what really matters are business outcomes, right? So we talked about the importance of upskilling leaders to be AI fluent, but with a focus on business outcomes. What is it going to do for your business function? How do you measure success? What's the ROI? And once you've got that, an AI team with business team can really collaborate really, really effectively. So that was really interesting. Secondly, I really like what Richard said about, as part of transformation, you got to raise the floor, but also the ceiling and the art of the possible. And it's a balancing act. You got to get people on the journey and be competent with the tools. But you also got to think about, growth and new experiences that you can deliver with AI. And on this topic, processes and how often organization we're not spending enough time understanding the true cost of a process, the resources involved, labor, contractors, IT, and so on, so that when you use AI or when you automate it, you have a clear benchmark so you can evidence the success. So more organization really need to think about first principle, spend more time understanding their own workflow, their own processes before they jump on the AI journey, so that the business case is really, really clear. So thank you everybody for listening, and see you on the next episode.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Data and AI Mastery. If you found value in today's discussion, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an insight from the leaders driving the future of data and AI. And if you're a data and AI leader looking to upskill your workforce with the fundamental data and AI skills to transform your business, Cambridge Spark is here to guide you every step of the way. Be sure to reach out to us on LinkedIn or on our website, cambridgespark.com. Until then, be sure to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with data, and remember, mastery comes with continued learning and action. Until next time, stay ahead, stay inspired, and stay masterful.